Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're glad you're with us to stay curious on this Friday the 13th. All kinds of interesting things going on around our Space Museum here. And we don't have the mic picking up? Okay. What's test one, two, three? Hello, everybody. Are we getting out there right? 13th, Marty? Okay. Sorry for the delay there, but when the audio's not going, it's not going. It is a Friday the 13th, okay? We're going to talk about on Stay Curious some superstitions of astronauts before their launch. All kinds of superstitions in the space program, from Norm Carlson's beans or go for the shuttle launch, and oh, cutting the tie of the launch director, urinating on tires if you're a Russian. We're just going to feature a couple little ones of those today because it is Friday the 13th. It's still better than Monday the whatever, says little Gene there. And of course, Friday the 13th kind of messed up by that horror movie thing. And here's a guy behind me saying the scariest thing I do on Friday the 13th is check my bank account. I guess that's why I'm sitting right there under that meme there. So we're going to look at a couple traditions there. We're going to talk about the Trekkie Star Trek. All Star Trek lovers launch on this date in 1993. And look back at the Mir Space Station, as our shuttles of January have two Mir missions that are very, very historic. STS 81 and 81 and 89 are January shuttle flights. And Marty and I went out and saw Norm Thagard today as the astronaut du jour at the Space Center, and he did an engaging talk. Oddly enough, didn't talk anything about Mir, but talked about his other great missions, and we'll show you a picture of Norm and me. And as I scoot over here to show the shuttle a little bit, Marty, there, minimize myself there so that we can see this gorgeous shot by Tom Usiak of the shuttle lifting off on this date in 1993. This is Endeavour's third flight blasting off to space. So let's kick it off here, Marty, and hope we don't have any more Friday the 13th gremlins. It's been one of those days. As the astronauts walk out, and this is STS-26 there in the return to flight after Columbia, they walk out to the van, and right underneath the American flag, you have a bunch of stickers that they put up there. And I just want to make sure I got the right, yeah, that's Covey. Hauk is leading the way there, and Covey's got the big excited to go to space on STS-26 with Lounge, Hilmers, and Nelson there. So George Pinky Nelson making his first flight there. I'm checking it on my shuttle scroll. Well, there are stickers there, and if you have been on a previous flight, as you walk under that sticker, you're supposed to slap it for good luck. So a couple of these guys may have seen their stickers up there as they went out to return us to space in the great launch of STS-26, which, of course, was on September 29th, 1988. Well, another tradition, as we look at a couple beautiful pictures that I pulled out of here. Marty, you're thinking of some of these pictures for green screens, aren't you? When we look at that shot from a T-38, the shadow going into the ocean there, you see the surf. One of the things that Commander Pam Melroy says, the astronauts won't leave the launch pad until they're done playing cards. There's a ritual card game that has to be played before everyone suits up. And you cannot walk out the door until the commander loses. And she was asked, was she tempted to throw the game? She says, absolutely not. Then there's the tradition, as we look at another beautiful picture here of the moon and the aft end of the shuttle, those OM pods and the rudder, the thin blue line that keeps us all together as earthlings. There's the cake. And you always see the astronauts posed with a cake. A beautiful cake appears before every launch, and the crew poses with the cake, but no one eats the cake. It's untouched. So there's probably 30 years of cakes in some freezer over there at KSC. And let's see, another tradition, one of my favorite shuttle pictures there, the silhouette against our thin blue line there. Scott Perzinski, like many astronauts, said that he carried his good luck charm was a tiny photo album of his family, a little ring photo with his kids when they were 6 months old, he said. And he just says it's a wonderful environment to look at your family and think about the strong connection you have with home. And of course, sports fans do all kinds of things as we're looking at this landing of the shuttle. For you photographers out there, Tom, Mark, and Carlton, looks like the photographer blasted a strobe right there. That's how you get that light like that on that engine coming back from space. I think that's a very cool photo. Well, lots of sports fans like Dan Tanney, a dedicated but much distraught Chicago Cubs fan, he was taking his favorite ball cap, the Cubs, to space. And so a lot of good luck charms to think about on Friday the 13th. I just whipped that together at the last minute. Marty, make a note. A great show for us to produce is about all the good luck charms throughout history that astronauts have taken with them, or rituals that they've done before their launches. So hope you're having a good Friday the 13th. We have had a fabulous day at the American Space Museum. A lot of visitors coming in to see the Falcon Heavy launch Saturday at 5:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is a scheduled launch with a national reconnaissance observatories, a bunch of satellites for the Air Force, for the Space Force, actually, not the Air Force. So they're going to land 2 of those boosters on landing zone 1. So really thrilling Saturday launch is stacking up, Marty, because sunset is at 5:36. The launch will be at 5:55. It will be a glorious twilight cloud that all you photographers will enjoy out there. Marty, we got some fans wanting to chime in on our UCX family microphone.
Yeah, Tom Usiak, I like his comment. He said, we had a superstition. We would always eat at Roy Rogers before we left for Florida to cover a flight.
Oh, really? Roy Rogers? What time frame are you living in? What Arthur Treacher's isn't open anymore? That's haven't been a Roy Rogers in a long time, Marty. How about you?
Right, but he's talking about when they were coming down.
Yeah, right, when they were coming down in the 80s and 90s and stuff. I understand that. Yeah, well, those are great traditions. I have some myself when I go on a long trip. One is to just ask God to watch over me and bring me back safely. But that's a good one. Thank you, Tom, for watching today. I enjoyed talking to you the other day. And, well, a launch today that the UCX covered was Endeavor's 3rd launch. Here is the logo of the STS 54, a launch of January 13th today in 1993. A symbolic eagle. I love this patch. Look at the eagle. So we are America's what that says. They launched the TDRS, Tracking Data and Relay Station, up there. You would think that it would be a Department of Defense mission, how bold our eagle looks there. But the whole crew were eat up with Star Trek. Hey, Jessica Kiki, our favorite Trekkie out there, our Trekkie techie that's helped Marty and me do this program the way we're doing it now. All Star Trek fans, they were the first shuttle crew to dress up like the series in the movies. They chose the uniforms from the Star Trek movie, The Undiscovered Country. You all know that, but I don't. Marty doesn't. That's Mario Runco on the left, or their second there, with the Vulcan Tiktorang Tesmer sign and his Vulcan ears there. If you've seen Mario lately, his hair's down to his shoulders, and I'm sure he's a Trekkie fan. He's a Brooklyn guy, I do know that. The commander in the middle there is John Casper. This was his second of 4th flights. Everybody was doing their second flight except for Susan Helms there, and Susan had 5 flights in the end of the 30-year shuttle program, and she became a general and was over the Patrick Air Force Base for a while. The other crew members there is Don McMongle, 3 flights. Don's on the far right there beside um, Susan, and Greg Harbaugh is 4 flights there. So all Star Trek fans, how cool is that they dressed up? Astronauts would do several crew photos. They would do photos in their military or civilian clothes together. They would do a joke kind of photograph, as well as the serious ones in the blues, flight suits, and then in the orange launch suits, blue casual suits they run around in. So this mission was a really good one. 6 days they spent. Runco and Harbaugh did a 5-hour EVA testing foot restraints and simulating large objects and microgravity, seeing how these tasks would work. As in 1993, we were thinking about building the International Space Station. And here is that gorgeous launch by the UCEC brothers. That is the steam cloud from the SRBs coming at you. You can tell that because it's lighter colored than the nasty smoke going the other direction from the solid rocket boosters. And that was a beautiful, beautiful launch that day. Trying to see off the top of my head what time of day that was. That was about a 2 o'clock in the afternoon launch, it looks like there. So what they did was, this is a tracking data and relay station. We talked a little about that with Hugh Harris on Monday, or on Wednesday, when we had Hugh in house to talk about the shuttles of January. And these were very important and still are important. There's 5 of them strategically placed around the globe. There's 1 that's in reserve. And this is the information satellites that all the ISS data goes through. Some military stuff, but military's got their own satellites so they can encrypt things in this spy versus spy world we've created of low Earth orbit. So, but we're going to talk now a little bit about, because we had 2 shuttles of the month of January involved flights to the Mir Space Station. We were going to talk a little about this yesterday and had a snafu where we had images way too big, so we missed half of our show, and we almost did that today. Marty, we've done this now 730 episodes today, and since July we've been doing it with our Streamlabs program. So even, there's a lot of snafus to this, and we appreciate you all hanging with us there. By the way, that big boom on the upper left sticking out there, Marty, beneath this is actually Atlantis. Atlantis made 7 quick trips to the Mir. Atlantis, that is the motor that raises and lowers the orbit of the Mir Space Station, stuck way away from the modules there. The Mir Space Station became a legend in its own time, 15 years in orbit, 3 times its planned life expectancy. Americans didn't go up there until its 10th year, and it was nasty. It became so cluttered with used up and broken equipment, floating trash bags. There was no adequate remedy was ever developed to deal with the stowage situation. It was described as and you'll see in other pictures that we show it here, it was described as a hedgehog whose spines could pierce a spacewalker's suit. It looked like a dragonfly in space, and the best book you want to read about the Mir is called Dragonfly. 100-ton Tinker Toy is another description of it. When Jerry Linenger got there, one of our 7 astronauts to live on the Mir Space Station during about a 4-year period, Linenger compared Mir to 6 school buses all hooked together. And that's pretty accurate. 4 of the buses were at an intersection, and we're going to see the inside of that here in just a second. Yes, Marty?
Wasn't there a fire on Mir when Linenger was on board?
Yes, there was. There was a fire when Linenger was on board, and a crash when David Wolf was on board. We'll see a picture of that in just a minute in our recap. Well, here is our continuously occupied International Space Station for the last 22 years. The size of a football field, okay, or a soccer pitch for Robert Law up there watching in Scotland. Friday night cocktail time, huh, Robert? Thank you for watching us on your big screen TV. This is the Chinese Tiangong space station in its completed form, an artist rendering. I haven't seen any pictures of it yet from a crew leaving it, but the Heavenly Palace is barely 150 feet long. All right, it's not even that. As we look at a comparison of the International Space Station, 109 meters, that's over 300 feet in U.S. system. 37 meters, let's say it's 40. Well, that's 120 feet in length, okay? That is about the length of the space shuttle that was 122 feet long. Let's go back this way. There we go. And there is the Mir Space Station. Really an amazing chapter of human history. This is where we learned to live in space, the Russians first, and then they let us on board in cooperation. The Mir, where is my Mir visitors list here? 104 individuals visited the Mir Space Station. It's 15 years, okay? It does not count double for dual citizenship people, all right? They had 42 Russians on it. 44 Americans flyers, 8 women, 7 Mir crew members, 3 double-digit flights, and 1 person was up there 3 times on the Mir. France, Germany, Afghan, then Russia used it in the early days to enhance their communist bloc countries. It was launched during the USSR days, and its demise was during Russia. When it had changed itself on there. So anyway, we had 9 missions to Mir, 7 dockings. Okay, we did a rendezvous first, and in 1960 STS-63 in 1995 is when all this started. The first Russian cosmonaut on a U.S. spacecraft was in February '94. And just an interesting, I mean, though you didn't stay on the space station, okay, once you docked with it, you got to go all over the Mir and check it out. So, because that's where we get that over 44 individuals from America can say they've seen the inside of this thing and smelled it and so forth. Wendy Lawrence told us about it, that it just looked horrible inside. Here are our astronauts who participated in our wonderful Mir program with the Russians that created the bedrock and lessons learned by us about some of the near almost fatalities they had on the Mir space station. Very crude technology compared to what we do now with the shuttle, the International Space Station. But in the back, that's Andy Thomas. He was the last one there. Shannon Lucid's in the middle. That's David. That's Foale, Michael Foale right there. He was the next. He was the third in line. Left to right there, and seated is of course Norm Thagard, the first American on the space station, and kind of disappointed he didn't talk about that. There is one of my John Blaha seated next there, and then you got Jerry Linenger and David Wolf, the last resident of the Mir Space Station. So they all have something to share and talk about. Gee, I don't know if they ever do. We didn't ask Norm many questions. We let the audience do that, and our good friend Nick Thomas, of course, was conducting that today. And we're going to have Nick back on in February to help you all stay curious on Mondays. Well, here is the patch of the Russia-America shuttle program. Most of these launches occurred during the tenure of Jay Honeycutt as shuttle director, and Jim Harrington was the launch director for, I think, 7 of the 9 missions, and both are great friends of our museum, and one day I'll try to get them to talk about that with us. Here is the uh, school buses jammed together. As you can see, the shuttle's 122 feet from tip to tip. So this, just think of the shuttle going from one end to the other, and then having another axis going through there. So it was still a little bit of a claustrophobic type situation there, I would think, Marty, particularly for someone that hates claustrophobia like me. This is where four of those intersections greeted. Okay, one of them is the Spectre module that was knocked into by a cargo ship. We'll talk about that in a minute. So all of these tubes and this is air ducts going everywhere, all right, to put more air into these modules. Quite a mess there. And when they had the fire, I mean the crash, it was very difficult to cut some of these wires and the hoses to put a cover quickly, as the leaking spectra segment of the Mir Space Station was definitely leaking air and was never gotten in. Well, they did go in on a internal EVA to retrieve some things, but that's where David Wolf was staying, and that was quite a hairy situation there for him. Actually, I take that back. That was Michael Foale was on there during the crash in the summer of 1997. Here is Shannon Lucid, the only long-duration woman to visit up there. Spent 100 and over 100 days. Don't have my notes all in front of me here organized, but bear with me. She was up there 188 days, setting a woman's endurance record for the time. All right, and how cool is that? That was broken by Christina Cook, 11 months on the International Space Station. You have in there, I just wanted to mention this while we look at Jerry, there's Norm Thagard, looking great on the space station in 1995. And we saw him today at age 79. I think he was 57 on this. Imagine this though, a physician astronaut, Valery Polyakov, lived aboard Mir for a single continuous stay of 437 days. He stayed like 14 months, almost 15 months up there. He left when Thagard came up there, but he became the director of a biomedical institute. All right. He spent a total of 678 days on that space station. Incredible what the Russians did up there. Can you imagine 365 days a year and then going 467? That's 3 months more than a year. Not sure if that gentleman's still alive or not. Here I am with Norm Thagard a few hours ago. I learned this, Marty, taking these pictures. You don't talk to him because, one, you get a crummy picture of your mouth, and that's why he didn't say anything to anybody when someone was taking a picture with him. Good guy, had a good fun time with him. He was bragging about being married to his wife for 57 years. Indeed, you should brag about that. They got married right when he became a Marine. Hoorah. Marty and him enjoyed sharing some stories. Well, not really stories, but relating that both were in Vietnam in serving our country. He had, 180 missions or something like that, Marty, didn't he? So when Thagard came back, this is the crew of STS-71. Now, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 people. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, 10 people there. How'd they pull that off, Marty? 10 people on the space shuttle? No, we've never had 10 people in a space shuttle. Well, this was a trip to space, as I'm looking for my notes here in front of me. That STS-71 in June 95 was launched, and it had a crew of 7 on board, and 8 came back. All right, going up were Hoot Gibson, Charlie Precourt, Ellen Baker, Greg Harbaugh, and Bonnie Dunbar in this group. And also going up with them were two Russians, Solyelev and Budarin. And then they left those two guys up there, and they brought back Norm Thagard on his fifth and last flight, and then brought back Strekalov, who's also on his fifth and last flight, and Desarov, who's on his first flight. Well, how'd they get those 8 people in the space shuttle? Well, we're so glad you asked that, because here is the departing STS-71, which was Atlantis. Just wanted to double check that. As it departed, as seen from a Soyuz spacecraft that also detached to film all of this, all right? And in that little cabin over there are 8 astronauts, or 2 cosmonauts and 6 astronauts. And the 3 of them, including Norm, were laying on a lawn chair, high-tech lawn chair that we are proudly have at the American Space Museum, situated on top of our shuttle console. Many of you have seen that. Some of you may have been in our museum and say, gee, I missed that. Well, this was the lawn chair that they made so these guys could stretch out. They knew that gravity was going to affect them greatly, so they wanted their legs out straight. And due to the long duration of their mission, these special seats were installed on the orbiter's mid-deck floor to allow the 3 men to land in a reclining position with their feet in empty mid-deck bulkhead lockers. They opened up the lockers so their feet could stick in it. And Thagard used and signed this for us somewhere down the line about 10 years ago, I think. So the Mir Space Station was called Venerable and also Derelict. It was sometimes called Robust, and then it was sometimes called Accident Prone. It was called a Marvel in its beginning, and then in the end it was called a Lemon. All right. It had just simply wore out. The Russians had planned to have it up there for 5 years. It ended up being 15 years with some more additions to it. One of the designers of it just passed away, the Russian UCF. He actually went to this International Space Station to check out his design on a mission of his recommendations up there. This is a spacewalk. There in the middle is a cosmonaut with an Orlon suit on. Jerry Linenger took this photograph, giving you a sense of the size and being outside of it. It was deorbited on purpose and sunk in the ocean in early 2001. And they did a controlled re-entry over the Indian Ocean for that. All right, that was kind of cool. Here is Linenger. They had a fire when Linenger was on there, and this fire was caused by a canister that he's holding in his hand, I think. These canisters are oxygen canisters that make a flame, it's like a flare. And that flare creates a flame and oxygen at the same time, a scientific principle, okay, to replete the air in the station. And it caught fire, and it had a very serious fire and started burning up stuff in one of the segments. Here's Linenger shortly after the fire wearing protective mask gear, and it was a mess to clean up. If anybody's had a fire in their home, I actually have. Years and years and years ago that got put out quickly, but still just the soot everywhere and so forth that got in dishes and places you wouldn't imagine that had closed cupboards and so forth. So there's Jerry Linenger. Hope we can talk to him one day. So here is the damage on the Spectra module, and the damage is above my head here. See these holes here? What was going on was a cosmonaut was actually using a joystick and kind of a computer game simulation of docking for real. And they were docking a cargo ship. And he hadn't trained very much on this. And he was at the control panel there with this joystick and trying to control the speed, and it was coming in way too hot, and he couldn't stop it. And it was lucky it didn't hit this thing head on. It clipped the wings and went by. Here's another picture of the damage on the solar panel on the upper left there. Why was he doing this when an automatic docking was part of the regime of the Progress docking supply ships? Well, if you know the space industry of Russia, the cosmonauts got paid bonuses for doing some of the tasks. You got a bonus for an EVA that was successful. You got a bonus for manually docking the Soyuz spaceship to the Mir Space Station. And this cosmonaut was looking for a bonus to remotely dock the Progress space supply ship with a joystick and a little bit of some controls there, which had not been worked out thoroughly. But he wanted the money, apparently, and overlooked safety a little bit. Probably was disciplined when he got back. Maybe got a cut in pay or sent to Siberia for a holiday weekend or something. That's how the Russians rolled. Okay, that was part of their philosophy, was having incentives for their cosmonauts to do well on the tasks that they were to perform out there. Very interesting, isn't it? Where our astronauts were paid a government salary strictly based on their pay grade as a government employee, called and military astronauts were given the military grade of their rank. No extra mileage, no turning in your mileage for orbiting the Earth, none of that stuff. You got just a straight salary, and then you had to turn down gifts and things like that until you retired from NASA. So a good shout out there to the Mir Space Station. Okay, it's just really a marvel that we didn't kill anybody on it, Russians or Americans. It really helped us understand how to build the International Space Station, particularly the cooling system of ammonia lines is what they use. How to do this. There's a lot of heat generated in any spacecraft by not just the human beings' body temperature altogether, but the computers and all the electronics and engineering stuff that needs electronics heat up quite quickly. That's why they got to get the payload bay doors open on the shuttle, that first orbit, which they always did, or it would have had to come back because it would have cooked some of the heating. Heat inside would have cooked a lot of the things that were involved with the energy process and all the facility processes on a space shuttle. Marty, there's a few, we'll end Stay Curious today with a few tokens that you may own or might want to own from the great Mir history of the cooperation with America. First, we have any questions out there, Marty? All right. Well, maybe you have a coin like this. That's a light aluminum coin that was it contains with it some material that was orbited on the Mir Space Station. Now, what is this material, Doug Forrest? He knows. It's something from a nut or a bolt, or sometimes they even take a notebook and take the metal notebook binding, clip it, throw it in the vat that made this coin. Of course, you just don't throw it in the vat. You have to weigh it and all that, because these items have to contain so many grains of what the material it says it is, space-flown metal, to legitimize it as you're holding something that you can say, I had something flown in space on this. Thank you for watching today, and a happy Friday the 13th to Dave Stange. Hey, Alex Newman, watching from Germany. Hadn't seen your name pop up there for a while, young lady. Bruno Lacondon's watching. Steve Hammer, thank you for joining our Stay Curious family with Cynthia Rossi, one of our A-listers there, star performers. We got Pamela Shivik. Hey, Pamela. She's down in Florida like me. We both grew up near Lake Erie, so we're glad we're not up there shivering. Gary Gerald got off his tractor, maybe. He's a peanut farmer in Georgia. hope to see you here. I know you're probably going to come down here and get warmed up, Gary, so stop by and see us, all right? Melissa Pope's watching. William Whiting. Hey, William, can't wait to get down here. We miss his balcony this Saturday, Marty, for a launch. Denny Noah's watching. And Maurice Krowazinski. Maybe I'm saying that right, maybe I'm not, but I'll meet her someday and she'll correct me on there.
Larry Puskar.
Pardon me?
Larry Puskar just signed.
Oh, Larry Puskar just signed. He wants to be known on there. And we have a lot of you that don't shout out that you're watching, and we certainly appreciate Tony Achilles out there and a bunch of you that you're not really remaining anonymous. They just want not cheer in there. This is the front side of that coin, Marty. There's the back side. And that says this medallion commemorating the cooperation between the United States and Russia contains metal flown on the space station shuttle and the Russian Mir. How cool is that? I love those. But one of the real cherished things to have is a flag thrown on space, flown on Mir. Marty, you have one of those. Those were given to you. Why'd you earn one of those?
We just participated in the mission as far as the launch and checkout preparation.
As part of the engines of the shuttle, the launch processing services group there that Marty he was over about 40 employees, he tells me. And all of them that I've met say he was a good boss. So, but there's the flag that was, they took bundles of those up there, then they put them on a nice little certificate and handed them out to you. That's $100 all day long, minimum $100 can go for that. But that's something that comes up frequently on our American Space Museum auctions. The next auction, Marty, is February 18th.
Something like that.
Sounds like the second or Saturday in February. We'll be telling you more about that. So thanks, everybody, for staying curious today with us. There is a gorgeous shot that the UCX took, that square frame there. Let me put that up there, Marty, because you don't see the fire on the back, on the green screen there. As you just look at that, again, to the left, you've got the steam of the SSMEs, and to the right, it's a darker cloud from the solid rocket boosters there. Just moments after liftoff on a remote camera that the UCX have done so well in sharing with us at the museum and all of you now. So, well, Friday the 13th, hope that you all get through the rest of the day of it there. I know it's been a little challenging for us, Marty. If I hadn't gone out and spent the morning brown-nosing an astronaut, I might gotten my work together a little earlier today. But you know me, we got to get out there and have some fun. Plus, it adds something to the museum story here when we can talk to these astronauts personally and encourage you to go out there and see them yourselves. So we will have more for you next week, of course. We got hopefully we'll see a big launch of 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together. 2 of them are going to land out at the Cape Canaveral Space Force. And we'll undoubtedly be sharing pictures of that taken by our wonderful friend Carlton Bailey. Hey, Carlton, I'll give you a ring here in just a minute, brother. So anyway, y'all have a great weekend. We're chilly going to be in Florida. As I understand it, the UCX in Lancaster, Pennsylvania are going to have warmer weather than we are this weekend. So you all enjoy it out there. And we're going to enjoy our little cold spell here. And until we pick it up again and help you stay curious next week, I'm Mark Marquette on behalf of Marty and our whole staff here at the American Space Museum saying we can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.